Hello again, and welcome to Discovering in Color. The channel is designed to show you just how much fun it is to spend time in the outdoors. Today we're going to go over some lessons learned for the 4-day through hike we took last week up in the Appalachian Mountains. What we're going to do is we're going to go over this using the 10 essentials for backpacking and hiking. And we'll start at the top, starting with navigation, and we'll work all the way down to the end there. Now, this list was compiled off of the REI website, so they get credit for this list, not something that I made up on my own. And what we'll do is the first thing we're going to start with is preparation. Preparation cannot be overemphasized when it comes to doing this type of thing here. If you go out there and you're completely unprepared or you do it on a whim, you may find yourself in a situation that you don't want to be in. So the first thing I'm going to talk about for preparation is the navigation. When it comes to navigation, there's a couple of things that you definitely want to carry on you at all times. First one are some paper solutions to this, and this is the official Appalachian Trail map right here. And I also carried this one here, the AT Guide by AWOL. This one is very handy. It comes with a plastic bag. I got the unbound version, so I could only take the pieces of paper that I needed. But what you do is, it's got a lot of guide information in here. It's got where you're going. It has what's located at each place that you want to go to. So this is a very good guide to bring with you. Another thing that you want to bring with you that I reviewed before I started, but actually didn't carry on the trail, is an actual map. A lot of people don't use maps nowadays, but a map gives you perspective of the entire area that you're going to be walking. This particular map right here has elevations. Okay. And here's what I mean about elevations. It has the route that you're going to take in red. It's also got the elevations of the different areas that you're going to be climbing over. And I do mean climbing. You're hiking, but you're climbing. It has those listed here, and you can see the entire length of your route. So it makes it very easy to plan out your day by knowing what's coming up. The AWOL guide also has that, but it's a little more difficult to follow on here because it's almost like a watermark in the back. So it's a little bit harder to see exactly where the ups and downs are. By having this map right here, you can get the entire route laid out for you for your day planning, and you get your entire elevation laid out for you. So this is a very handy thing to do. And when I do another section of the AT, I will take the AWOL guide. I will take this guide. Another thing that I used was the Guthook app. The Guthook app on your cell phone is very, very handy because it's going to pinpoint exactly where you are, so it can be used to assist with a map. It also tells you what's coming up, and it's updated a little more frequently than just the maps right there. The maps are for as good as long as they're printed, but the Guthook app actually updates, and you can actually place updates in there, and other people can see that the water was good, or there may have been some problem, or something was very great. So those things you can actually update. The next thing we want to talk about is lighting. I just carried this very simple. It's a BioLite right here. It's just a headlamp, and it's a rechargeable headlamp. So it's got your lighting source on the front, and it's got a rechargeable battery right here, which runs on a standard mini USB connector port right here. So that if the batteries ran low, you can just charge them, and hopefully you brought a battery along. And I did bring a battery along. I'll explain that in a minute. This light here, it did pull a little bit of a trick on me. I charged it up beforehand, but somehow or another, inside the bag, it must have clicked itself on. And the first night I went to use it, it only had one little blip of charge left on it, which was plenty for the night. But then I was able to recharge it the next day. Another thing you want to do, because we camped in the summertime and the days are very long, I didn't use the light very much at all. But when you set up your tent, one of the first things I did was when I was placing equipment inside my tent was to make sure I put this flashlight in there. Because on the trail, if it's not a full moon night or a very illuminated light, and you get up in the middle of the night to take care of business, it's extremely dark. By having this headlight I know was inside the tent, I didn't have a problem with that. And I primarily use the red light on here. I use the white a little bit, but I usually use the red light function. So that's lighting. The next one is sun protection. That one's actually very easy. In the green tunnel, you don't get a lot of sun. So I just used a hat on the top of my head. I didn't use any sun protection because For the most part, for the time of year we went in June, you're in the shade. You're not out in the sun very much. So I believe if you go earlier in the year, in perhaps February or March, and there's some sunny days, you may get a lot of sun on you. But for us, sun protection wasn't really a problem. For first aid, that's the next one I want to talk about. That was actually a pretty simple one too. I brought a few Band-Aids. I brought a little bit of Neosporin. It was pretty much a half-used tube just to save on the weight. And I brought some diarrhea medicine, because the last thing you want to do is get out there and get the runs. And if you don't have any kind of thing to help with that, you're going to have a problem. So pretty much that's all the first aid type materials that I brought. Now, one thing that you might want to do, either carry with you or carry in some type of a bounce box that's ahead of you, is Lye Soap. Lye Soap helps a lot with bug bites, etc. Now, of course, if you're going to use this, you want to make sure that you use it in a place away from streams, away from rivers, if you need to use it on the trail. The bar is a little heavy. I'd recommend that you put it in a bounce box so that when you do take a 0 day or a Nero day and you're in town, you have a way to soothe those bites. But Lye Soap is an extremely good treatment for chiggers, mosquitoes, those type of things, because it helps to dry out the skin and it greatly reduces the itch. Oh, and also, don't forget to bring some bug spray, because the bugs are out there. When we went in June, there were a lot of bugs. I didn't see a single tick the entire time I was out there, but there were plenty of mosquitoes and there were plenty of chiggers. The next one is a knife. All I carried was this very small Swiss Army knife. This was the only knife that I needed. In my previous description, I was going to carry a different knife, but in the very end, I ended up switching out to this Swiss Army knife. It has everything that I need on it. It's got a blade, it's got a small blade, it's got some tweezer little things in here. So this pretty much sufficed for everything I need. I think I'm going to upgrade this one because there's some newer versions out there that actually have scissors, and having a pair of scissors kind of would have been okay to clip a few things off that kind of went bad. But for the most part, all I used was the straight blade. I think I only used it one time. So when it comes to a knife, you don't need a Rambo knife. You don't need a big knife. Just kind of go with something that's going to work, that's small and light. And if you get to a point where you really need something and you're close to town, just wait till you get to town and take care of it. When it comes to fire and stoves and those type of things, I carried the MSR Pocket Rocket 2 stove, and that's what I used for all the meals when we were out there on the trail. I brought with me this large 230 gram thing of gas with me, butane with me, because I wasn't quite sure about my meal burns and how much I was going to do. And for the most part, I used this to boil water with. We did cook one meal with it, and that used up a little more gas. But what I do on the bottom of these when I buy them, I put the weight of the can when I start, and we camped for 8 meals. One meal was actually a meal that we cooked with, where I had to boil pasta for about 5 minutes, but the rest of them were pretty much just boiling water. The can started full at 380 grams, and right now I weighed it when I got back, and it's 325 grams. So over 8 meals, that basically equates to about 6.8 grams of fuel used per meal. So I probably more than likely could have gotten away with this little 100 gram canister had I decided to bring this instead for those days. And now that I know my fuel burn for the future, I'll know exactly how much to bring. You don't need to bring more fuel than what you're going to use before you can resupply. So this was too much fuel to bring. And I did meet some people who were going for a number of days, and they had canisters that were bigger than this. And there was no way in the world they were going to use that up. So once you know your fuel burn for what you're going to do, I will probably plan on about 10 grams of fuel per day. So if I'm doing a 4 or 5 day backpacking trip, I can pretty much use one of these. If I need more, I should be at a point where I can resupply and I can get another 100 grams. But I don't really see any reason now or in the future to carry more than about 100 grams, unless you're going to be going for more of an extended period of time, and in which case, maybe I'll carry 2 of these. But pretty much, that's all I'm going to do. Like I said, the key is write down the weight, just like I've done on this one here, and I've done on this one here. Write down your weight before you start with a full canister. That way you know how much fuel is left in there and how much fuel you're burning. For shelter, I used the Lunar Solo Duo Explorer. That was a very good tent. It weighs only a little bit until it gets wet. Of course, it weighs more when it's wet, but it dries out very good. One of the things on the trip, when I stopped at Woody Gap, I was able to lay out the tent because it rained quite a bit. And within half an hour, more than half of the water had dried up over it. And then I just repacked it again. But make sure you take a tent that can withstand a lot of rain if you're going to be in a rainy area. Make sure you take a tent that is light enough for you. Make sure it's big enough for you, because that tent is a 2-person tent. It was really the perfect size for what Angela and I needed for the trip. When it comes to sleeping, make sure you have the right sleeping bag, the right sleeping pad. For us, the sleeping bags were perfect. Angela had a 45-degree bag, and I had a 45-degree quilt that I took. And that was the first time I've gone with a quilt on a long extended trip. And I think I'm pretty much sold on quilts right now. It worked pretty good. For pads, this gets back to preparation. Make sure you test out your pad, especially your pad, before you go on the trail. That was one thing that we didn't do. I took an old reliable pad, worked for me every single time. We got up there on the first night and it sprung a leak. Had we checked that pad with air before we left, we might have noticed that there was a weak spot in the seam, which is where it leaked. So make sure that you check your gear out before you go. Now, when it comes to food, that's another planning and preparation type tool you're going to do. My recommendation is to only carry the food that you need to get you to the next resupply point. So whether that's 2 days, whether that's 5 days, whatever it's going to be, carry what you need. And you can easily plan that out. The food that we carried, I kept in, I don't have the bag here anymore, but I just took a Sea to Summit dry bag. I'd originally talked about taking either the bear canister or taking the bear bag that I had there. It's actually sitting right over there. And what we found out was once we got out there, I knew everything had said it, but there were bear canisters that we could put all of our stuff in. There are big Northern Tool boxes. I've shown that in some of the videos that we could put it in. When we stopped at Lance Creek, they had bear cables. We were able to hang our gear up. So if you're going to be on the Appalachian Trail and those materials or those different things are available for you, then you can just take a light waterproof bag. And that Sea to Summit bag that we took, it's a waterproof bag because it rained a couple of nights. We had it hanging up in a bear thing, but all the food was dry. And also inside that bag, even though it was a bag that was waterproof, I still had it inside of a large Ziploc bag. So there's nothing like preparing and having maybe a little bit extra when it comes to water protection. Now, when it comes to food resupply, there's a number of different ways you can do it. Once again, planning and preparation. You want to plan about how many days you're going to go in between your closest resupply point. Even if you decide to go beyond that point, still plan for that resupply point. For us, we carried the food from Springer Mountain all the way to Neal Gap. Neal Gap is a great resupply point. If you're going to go beyond that, you plan your next resupply point. Now, when you want to resupply, Neal Gap had all the food you could possibly ever want to put back into your food resupply. Or you could go to town and you can buy something there. Another option is you could mail a bounce box someplace. So no matter what your plans are, even if you're planning on, if we were planning on not stopping at Neal Gap, if we were just going to go through Neal Gap, we could have easily sent a bounce box to Neal Gap, brought enough food to get us from Springer Mountain to Neal Gap, even if we were going to go past Neal Gap, and we could have resupplied at Neal Gap with one of our bounce boxes. And there's a lot of towns that'll do that for you. So plan your meals out, set up your bounce boxes. Even if you're not going to use that bounce box, you can always stop there and remail the box forward to the next place that you want it to go. All right, I want to take a minute and talk about what I use to cook with. When I was cooking, I brought this 750 milliliter pot. This was to boil water and to prepare any meals in. And I just brought another 450 milliliter stainless steel glass to drink out of, be it coffee, tea, whatever I was going to make in it. It's difficult for 2 people to cook a meal in this 750 milliliter pot. So this one might become part of my day pack, but it's not going to be part of my backpacking anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to this 1.5 liter pot. I have carried it in the past. It's a titanium pot. At first I thought it was a little bit too big, but I tell you, if you're going to be preparing a meal, you need something with a little bit of size to it. Because the first meal that we prepared, which was a pasta and rice meal, it actually overflowed because that pot was just too small. This pot here, 1.5 liter pot, is actually perfect. You can boil water in it, you can cook in it. It's got a top, you can use it here. The top doubles also as a plate if you want to use it as a plate to eat out of, especially for two people. One person can eat out of the pot, one person can eat out of the plate. So this is going to be the go-to solution for the future, which is this titanium pot. Doesn't weigh very much, and it'll be very easy because we'll be able to put the cup, and inside the cup it contains two things here. I keep my MSR Pocket Rocket 2, which exceeded my expectations. This was an excellent stove to get. So if you're looking for something to get, very good on the fuel, and it burned, not a problem with the winds, a great buy. The other thing I brought with it is this is a Sparky. This thing here is Mr. Reliable. I've got to say that. There were folks out there with matches and different stuff. This didn't care whether it was wet. It didn't care whether it was dry, but it sparked every single time, and it never failed to light the stove. So if you're going to take something and you're looking for something that's super reliable, get yourself one of these Sparky things here, and it will make it happen. Look at that. You get plenty of sparks. It's dry in here, but when it was wet, it didn't care. So a good alternative, 100% reliable in all situations. Okay, next we're going to talk about water and water filtration. Brought two different systems with us to use on the trail. We brought the Katadyn BeFree and we bought the Sawyer Squeeze. So this I had used before on 1 or 2 campouts. This I've been using for probably 1 or 2 years. The Katadyn BeFree, when I first purchased it and was filtering with it, worked like a champ. But a lot of reviews said that after a while, it tends to not work so good. So this thing here has probably filtered 15 or 20 liters of water, and it works very, very slow. When I first used it, it more than exceeded with the Sawyer, the flow rate of the Sawyer. However, over time now, and not that much time, the flow rate has slowed down to a crawl. And I have tried to rinse it out with water. I've tried to back flush it, do everything. However, I can definitely see that the life of the Katadyn BeFree is not nearly the life of the Sawyer. The Sawyer to me was a champion on this entire trip right here because I mean, I've had this for well over a year or so, and it's been on many trips, and its flow rate is still spectacular. When it does slow down, you just use the plunger, or you can use a smart water bottle to back flush it. And this right here weighs maybe a little bit more than that. I actually haven't compared the weight too much, but I would say if you're going to take something and you're looking for something that's going to be extremely reliable, go with the Sawyer Squeeze. The Sawyer Mini is okay. You save a hair of weight, a couple of ounces of weight, but the Sawyer Squeeze is perfect. And get one of these smart water bottle caps right here to put on the top, and this thing worked great. And I use it with the CNOC bag. What I would do is basically I'd fill up the CNOC bag with water, which is right here. This is the CNOC, a 2-liter CNOC bag, and I would just fill this with water, attach it to the bottom of the Sawyer, and the flow rate is more than adequate to take care of what I needed to do. Now we're going to talk about clothing. And I would say the champion material to use for any type of a long distance hike is Merino Wool. This is the Merino Wool t-shirt that I actually wore on the trail while I was hiking. And yes, I have washed it. This thing here was absolutely fantastic. It kept the stink of clothes down. It can't do anything about body odor, but as far as clothes go, it was fantastic. It didn't, for the 4 days that I wore this and climbed up numerous mountains, Sassafras, Justice Mountain, Blood Mountain, it got sweaty. But in the end, the stink was minimal. I would usually hang it up at night when it wasn't raining and get it a chance to air out. For underwear, Merino Wool. Just some simple Merino Wool boxers. Wore these for 4 days. It worked like a champ. You can't go wrong with them. Darn tough socks. A fantastic thing to have. I can't praise these more than I could. And I also wore some REI sock liners with them. I didn't bring those up from downstairs, but some thin sock liners you could wear with this. On days that it was super wet and the trail runners I had got wet from the very first day, these are actually Dex Shell breathable waterproof liners. What I would do is I would either wear these over top of the Darn Tough socks, or I wore them on top of the thinner sock liners. And these on the outside got wet as can be, but on the inside, my feet perspired but they kept my feet dry. And because I had 2 layers of socks, which I like wearing, an outer layer and an inner layer, the socks tended to rub against each other, and I did not get a single blister or hot spot the entire 31 miles. But these, super recommended with trail runners because I didn't really care where I was stepping. I stepped through little creeks and I stepped in all kinds of, the trail was flooded a lot of the times and it was torrential downpour. But these deck shell things here, these were the champions. And if I can find me another pair, I'm probably going to try to pick up another pair of these. For camp clothes at night, I would put on this right here. This is made by Mountain Hardwear. This is actually a synthetic top, and I've worn this on a couple of different thru hikes. The brand of this is called, it's a Mountain Hardwear. It's a red, it's got a hood on the top, along with the sleeves. So this is a nice thing to have when you're sitting down in camp and the mosquitoes are kind of buzzing around. You can flip this hood up real quick. It'll keep them off of your ears. The brand of this, let me see if I can see the on the tag here, if it says what it is. It actually doesn't say it on the tag, but let's take a look at Mountain Hardwear. You go on their site, they sell this on a bunch of different websites out there, but it's actually a long sleeve shirt is what it is, synthetic. But this was, once we got done camping and I took off the stinky shirt, I would just put this on right here. So it's going to give you some bug protection because I did treat it with permethrin. So you're going to have some nice bug protection on here. And like I said, when mosquitoes were bugging with my ears, I just flipped up the hood. It's a nice lightweight hood and it kept those mosquitoes off of my ears. And then finally for camp shoes, Crocs. Okay, can't praise Crocs enough. These things, you put them on and you can walk around camp if it was wet or whatever. I like the Crocs that have this on the back right here because it's going to keep your shoes on here. I actually haven't thrown these in the washing machine yet. I'll probably do that today just to get them back white again. And they'll get, I guess they'll get as nice as they get. That kind of a thing there. For shorts, I just wore my hiking kilt. Hopefully you've seen the videos with my hiking kilt on. That's also made by Mountain Hardwear. Unfortunately, it's discontinued, so they don't make them anymore. A person told us on the first day that Neil Gap had some on the racks, and I was going to purchase another one. But when I got there, I asked around and looked around, but they didn't have any on the racks. So I'm pretty sure that you can't find them anymore. You'll have to use a different manufacturer. But Mountain Hardwear, if you're watching this, I highly recommend you bring those hiking kilts back because I've had a lot of folks ask me about them. So there is a demand out there. So hey, Mountain Hardwear, watch this. People want them. Bring back the hiking kilt. All right, for shoes, what I used were these Hoka One, these trail runners. A great shoe, plenty of cushion. In fact, they're the Hoka One Challenger ATR 5. They're still filthy dirty. I probably should wash them. But these things work like a champ. Highly recommended. Of course, they get wet, but I got to tell you, for the 31 miles, my feet were comfortable, no blisters. So leather shoes are okay, but I'm pretty much hooked on trail runners now, so long as the temperature's warm. I think if I hike when it's really, really cold, I may switch back to leather, but for any temperature that's going to be probably above 35 or 40 degrees, I'm pretty much going to go with these trail runners. All right, for rain gear, I use this Z-Packs rain kilt. This thing, it's made of Dyneema, waterproof, 100%. I can't give more thumbs up to this thing right here. Because I had the kilt and I had the rain kilt on, there was plenty of air to move through. It kept the sweat down even on the climbs and it was pouring down raining. So this right here, if you want to go on zpacks.com and buy it, it's a good buy. This was the raincoat that I used. This is the REI raincoat. It actually does have a hood. I've just put it back in here, but it's got a hood right here that comes out. And it's a good rain pouch, a rain jacket. It does have the pit zips in it here. And this will keep you waterproof for a while. With the amount of rain that we had, this actually, after about a day or so of just being wet, it did soak through. So I will probably going with a different rain jacket other than this REI rain jacket. I'm looking at a couple different brands right now, and I'll make a decision on which one I'm actually going to get. But this one for probably is going to be back to day hiking, something that even though it does get wet, over a prolonged amount of time, this did not keep me dry all the way through. I want to talk a little bit about communications on the trail. When I left, I had taken a look at coverage maps for AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, all those type of things on the trail, and did a lot of research. And what I heard was that Verizon would have overall the best coverage. So based on that, I went out and I bought a Verizon burner phone. Just put a card on it to be able to use. So I carried a burner phone. I also carried the Samsung Galaxy S9, which is what we're using to record this on. It's with AT&T. So I carried two phones, and I also carried, I know, shame on me. Well, not with shame, but I also carried this Garmin Inreach Mini. So here's what I found out by taking those things right there. AT&T and Verizon, for that portion of the trail that I was on, pretty much had the same amount of coverage. There weren't too many places I was at where AT&T would work, but Verizon wouldn't work. What we ended up doing is at nighttime, in places that we didn't have cell phone coverage, or even places that did have minimal coverage, I would just send a message on the Inreach Mini. There's an app called EarthMate that uses the cell phone with the Inreach. You type in what you want to type in, which were pretty much simple things like, here's where we're stopping for the night, everything's okay, that type of stuff. And I would send it over the Inreach. This worked so good that it worked in the canopy, in the green tunnel, and there were two nights that I used it that it actually worked inside the tent because it was raining and I didn't want to get out. I just turned it on, I typed my message on, sat this up here, and it would transmit through the tent, through the green canopy, and the messages were received because I would get responses back. But let's talk a little bit about backup battery usage on the trail. I use this little 13,000 milliamp per hour battery right here. Got two ports here for outputs that you can take it, and I charged the cell phone, or if I needed to charge the Inreach, which I actually didn't, but I would charge that. I charged my little Garmin watch right here. This thing took care of it all 4 days, no problem. When I got done, it still had 25% power left on it. So this was great for the 4 to 5 day trip if you're going to use it. Now, one thing that I probably may replace this with is that for one night, because we had so much rain, and even though the phone is in a waterproof case, it's in an OtterBox case, I reached a point where when I plugged in the cable and I plugged into the phone, it said there was too much humidity in the air and it wouldn't charge. So I had to go through a couple extra steps to kind of get things dry, and eventually I was able to charge the phone with this, but it took a little bit of effort. So in the future, I may look around and replace this one here with probably the same size battery, but one that's going to have a wireless charging adapter on the outside. So that way, if I do run into that issue where there's too much humidity in the air, those type of things, then I can just place the phone on top and it'll charge wirelessly, because that doesn't seem to cause a problem with moisture or anything like that. That right there is a very good rundown. Hopefully you enjoyed this. And that is a rundown of lessons learned, of gear that I went over on the Appalachian Trail. Just want to reemphasize a couple of things that you need to do. And the first one, and the most important, is preparation. Look into your hike, look where you're going, check out the weather, those type of things, and make sure that you are ready to go as best as you can be. You can prepare, but sometimes being fully ready is something that, things are going to happen, things are going to come up, and you're going to have to be able to adapt. By having flexible gear, by having a good mind, by remaining calm, you can adapt and it'll minimize any issues that you may have. Plan ahead. You don't need to carry everything. If there's things that you can put forward, either stash them someplace, you can stash water places, you can do those type of things. You can send bounce boxes forward so that you can resupply places. Think about those type of things. If you're planning on doing a section night of the Appalachian Trail and you're going to do more than 6 or 7 days, there's no reason in the world to carry 6 or 7 days worth of food. There'll be places along the way that you can resupply. So plan that into what you're going to do. That way, because one of the things I heard on the trail is that an ounce in the morning is a pound in the afternoon. So if you can reduce some of that weight, by all means, please reduce the weight. And I will definitely attest to that little statement that I made right there. An ounce in the morning is a pound in the afternoon. So with that, thank you very much for watching this video today. If you like them, please subscribe, pass this on to your friends and neighbors. If you know somebody at Mountain Hardware and they can remake that kilt again, please see if they're willing to do that, because I'd like to have two. I've got one right now and it works really great, but having a little redundancy is a good thing. So that's it. Discovering with Color, Gadget Man here. Thank you very much for watching.